Thank you so much for first this introduction and this invitation here with you around an essential topic for all of us, and it's really relevant with the whole dimension of what you are trying to do around citizenship and being a subject and also the future of our society. I think it's important in such a setting also to give you time for questions and remarks, and I will just try to highlight some of the dimensions that I think that we have to maybe think about, agree or disagree, but at least to have a more clarified picture and a more explicit understanding of the challenges ahead. So let me start with a short introduction, 3 main points around, I think, which is also the role of universities and professors and academics when it comes to these discussions that are connected with the civil society, not only the civil society, by the way, but anything which has to do with social policies and political discussions today. And then to speak about 2 main fields, which is really the old understanding of what it means to be a citizen and why today we are coming back to these concepts and trying to maybe not to change the content, but to have a better understanding of the whole dimensions of what it means to be a citizen, and then to come to where lies the priority, or where lie the priorities, in fact, when it comes to try to solve the problem and to be constructive. So let me start with something which is, why are we coming back to this? It's always important for us to ask ourselves why these questions are coming in such a passionate way and are everywhere. I don't know how many invitations of all the people who are working around Islam, around citizenship, identity, immigration, are always called to come and to speak, because we need to understand that we are trying to find solutions. 3 main causes, and the first one is quite paradoxical. We are talking about immigration as if it was something which was new. In fact, immigration is as old as humanity, and migrations in the European continent is a very old thing. The difference maybe between some of you and me is that you are perceiving yourself as Dutch, white citizens, but the difference between you and new Dutch is that you are just older immigrants. It's a question of time. So 2 or 3 generations we feel at home, but 1 generation not yet, and when we are the first generation, not at all. So it's a question of time, and this is something which should always be in our minds, because with time we get the sense of humility in the way we deal with this is home for me and not for you. This is to be defined as me being at home and you being welcome at home, and this is the host society. All this, terminology is connected to a perception of oneself and the perception of the other. But there is something which is quite paradoxical, is that when it comes to immigration, first we think about it as if it was something which was new, which is wrong, as I said. But the thing which is really important is that the first waves of immigrations is the first generation. They have been here for a long time, in fact, in Europe. In Holland, it came later than, for example, in Britain and in France. And it's good also in Holland to have a sense of what is happening elsewhere. But there is something which is quite interesting, is that the first generations, we didn't talk about them, because in fact they were quite invisible. Geographically speaking, they were in the same areas, and as to the work they were doing, they were working in the economic field in enterprises, but they were not visible for us. We start to speak about the presence of this immigration when in fact the 2nd and 3rd generations were more visible for us. In fact, they were getting out of the geographical ghetto, and we started to think that, oh yes, there is a community here. To think of them as outside our society, while in fact the 2nd generations were more visible because they were coming mainstream. So yesterday isolated, not visible, not a problem. Today visible, more integrated and perceived as the other among ourselves. The insiders, outsiders, or the outsiders, insiders, to use the terminology of some of the British sociologists, and among them Madud. So we have this, which is new visibility. And with new visibility in our streets here, in your streets in Utrecht, there's people apparently not like us, are not usually thought as setting the reality of the Dutch society. Second thing, which is really important, is that we see them now, they are visible, and what we understand from all the figures we have is that immigration is not going to stop. Because we may have a cultural resistance, but we have economic needs as well. And all the figures are clear. The European Union needs for the next generation between 11 to 20 million workers to come. They are not going to come from within Holland, they are going to come from outside Europe. And not even from Eastern Europe. So we have to deal with it. So there is something which is a contradiction that we have to solve, but it's part of our future. An economic need married with a cultural resistance. And this is us, this is the future. And the third one is, of course, what you mentioned at the beginning, violence and terrorism. It's among us, it could happen anywhere. And then new visibility, immigration to continue, and potential threat of violence are three main causes why we are coming now to this deep discussion. Why? Because all these phenomena are promoting new questions. Who are we with all these people visible? What are we becoming with all these people to come? And how can we be secure in our society where anything could happen with people saying, as for example we had it in Britain. In Britain it was a real crisis because someone born and raised in Britain was saying to his own society, you are killing my brothers there, I'm going to kill you here. He was born and raised in this society, talking to his society as if he was not from the society. And it means here that we have, as if he was not feeling that he belonged to this society. And this is why we have to keep in mind that citizenship is not about only rules and legal dimensions. It has to do with the sense of belonging, to feel that you are at home, and I will come to this. So having said that, these three dimensions, if you now understand only the three dimensions, you straight away understand that, yes, that's fine, thank you for coming. No, he told me before. He told me that So the point here is really, you understand that it's a complex issue. And when it comes to the complexity of the issue, what we really have to understand that to understand the complexity of the issue is teaching us to be humble in the way we tackle it. But there is something which is really important. Having, being involved with all these discussions at the grassroots level, with many, leaders and politicians at the local, the national, the continental, and even international level. And you have really to deal with the complexity of the issues. As I said, there is something which is a sense of humility. You don't have all the solutions. It's very difficult. But when we lose this sense of complexity and we add to this a sense of complete confusion, this is very dangerous. And look at the way we are tackling the issues now, coming with immigration, integration, Islam, religion, culture. It's just confused. The debates are completely confused. We don't know when we speak if it's a religious problem or a socio-economic problem. Look at what happened after in France with all the riots in the suburbs. When I was in Britain, the people were speaking about, oh, this is something which has to do with Arabs and Muslims, the projection, while the French politicians were much more cautious not to project onto this something which was a religious dimension, because it was not. But if we fail to address socio-economic problems, they could end up by being religious ones. if we don't give the people their legitimate civic rights, they will come to something which is a legitimate identity definition. And we had this also not only in Europe, we had this with the African American. Because when I was there years ago, when I was talking to African Americans, they said, don't talk to us about citizenship. We are citizens in this country and we are Americans. The problem is that they don't want to give us our legitimate rights. We are second-class citizens. So if they are treating us as second-class citizens, we have a stronger identity, which is our past, our memory, and it could be also our religion. So if we are confusing everything, we don't know exactly about what we are talking about. So confusion is something which is a very dangerous way of dealing with this. The second danger is that only confusion, the passions. And we start to speak, it's always like this. You speak about religion, you speak about intimate life. And when you speak about intimate life, the reactions could be very passionate. When you speak about identity, it's not easy because you are dealing with something which is the way you define yourself. And when you feel that someone is touching the way you define yourself, it's not only your mind which reacts, it could be your heart and your passions and your emotions. And today, in many of our societies, you had this just after the murder of Tariq Ramadan. The discussion in this country was very passionate. And now when we come to immigration, the populist parties, they know exactly how to deal with passions. They use the fears and then they use it to polarize the debate, and it works. I'm coming from a country, from Switzerland. The first party in my country is a far-right party. Using the fears of the people by saying, look, we don't want to see visible minarets in the street because it's the symbol of the dangerous Muslim presence changing the culture, the Swiss culture. And it works. The point is it works. It's the first party. And they can attract the people out of their fear. So first there is confusion. Second, there is this dimension, passionate debate. And then with the fears. And I think that we have to take this into account. We are not dealing with the normative discussion. We are dealing with fears. And we are dealing with people also. We don't have to be naive. We can't be naive. We know that some political forces are going to use the fears for their agenda. Because it's easy. When you have 5 years to get to be elected, the best way when you don't have social policies is to go towards that politics. Use the fears of the people if you cannot construct with their minds. And it works. So when we are dealing with this in this so essential topic, here, this is the way I understand it. Here, universities should be involved in the discussion. Because if we are far from this discussion, who is going to come with a new momentum? The journalists, we cannot blame them because they are under pressure with all what they have to speak about the reality. Their momentum is news, and news are very, very hardly people who are constructing. News are much more people who are destroying. So you cannot blame them to be under the pressure of news to be said tomorrow. News to be said, this is the way it works. On the other side, you have the momentum of politicians, and the politicians, the main concern is also to be elected in 5 years. And what our societies need now is the passionate debate, more reasonable debate, more explicit understanding, no confusion, and policies on the long run. If now the professors, the experts, the citizens are not involved in this discussion and are letting the floor to discussions coming from the passionate, confused, and scared, agenda, I think that we are all lost. We are in a vicious circle. So this is why I always understood, when I accepted to go to Erasmus in this identity and citizenship project connected with the municipality, the main concern was for me that it's a pilot project connecting academia with municipality. All together, we have to ask the professors and the experts, go, you have to just visit the streets. You have to know not only to speak on behalf of people, not only to speak about the people, but to speak with the people and to listen to them, because they are part of what you are constructing, to give a better understanding. So no ivory tower, but living together and constructing this together. It's for me essential, and it's part of all what I am doing. And very often some are saying, oh, it's not enough objective, it's not enough academic. The life of the people is something which is practically objective. And you have to take it and to try to build out of it. You cannot neglect this. It's also something which we have to do. And there, with all this picture, we come now to the concept of citizenship and trying to find out what is going on at the grassroots level. And to try to understand in which way we can use this. Because what happened can you hear me? It's okay? What happened for years was our definition of citizenship was quite clear. Why? Because we were referring to something which was an apparent homogeneous cultural common background. People were coming from Eastern Europe, they were coming, I was in Switzerland and people also were living, and yourself in Holland, you were living going through the same process. People coming from Poland, people coming from Italy, people coming from Spain, same culture, European, same religion, and they were not a problem. We didn't have a problem of the public sphere being neutral, yes or no, because we were all accepting that what was there already was neutral. When you go out in the street and you see a church, no one among you is saying, is the public sphere neutral? It's part of the neutrality known. So sometimes what is neutral is what we are used to. It's neutral because it's not visible for me. But then you go outside and you see a mosque. Is the public sphere neutral, yes or no? Why a mosque is asking you the question of the neutrality of the public sphere? Because it's coming with a new definition, not a new definition, a new element in an old definition, to be clear. A new element in an old definition of what is neutral in the public sphere. So here we have something which is the concept of citizenship, a member of a structured society having rights and duties, equal rights and equal duties before the law, and starting with something which is very essential here is commonality. And the commonality is that we all accept the common legal framework and we accept it as abiding. We are law-abiding as citizens. So this is something which is the starting point, and I think that we can't in any way go away from this first dimension. Citizenship is to be a member of a structured society, a relationship with the state, and this is what is common. Why? Because we need something which is helping us to understand why we are together. How and why. It's essential because then we also have to deal with diversity, and if we don't have something which is common, the diversity just can be chaotic in the way we live together. So the laws of the country are to be respected by all of us, with one condition. And you know why now I'm putting this condition? Because I was in Saudi, no, not in Saudi I can't, but I was in South Africa. I was in South Africa and I was dealing with, I was with all the people who were competing against apartheid around Mandela. And I was talking about the fact that we have to abide by the law. And the laws are the reference. And not only one, but in 3 different settings. I had people coming to me and recalling something which is essential. They told me, yes, we have to abide by the law, but it should be clear that it's when the law are promoting equal rights and equal duties and justice. Because if you come to us and to tell us that we have to abide by the law, while we had the apartheid legislation saying that a black man or a black woman should be treated differently than a white one, to abide by the law is not the way forward. And I think that this is something which is really important because yes, we abide by the law, but we accept from the very beginning that the right way to be a citizen is always to be critically loyal. loyal to the country, but in a critical way. And you all accept this. You are Dutch. And if today you were to see your government doing something which would be wrong, for example, we had this discussion in Britain, in the, during the, just a few years ago, when they were accepting to follow the states in the war in Iraq. You had British people, and not only Muslims, by the way, British citizens saying, no, we don't accept this, this is not the way. They were doing what? Respecting the law, but being loyal in a critical way with the government. You are right, we are with you. We think that it's wrong, we are going to say it. And this is something which is really important, not to be blindly supportive of any kind of entity. This is something which is really important in the way we speak about loyalty, because at the end of the day, we should be loyal to some principles. If your government is doing something which is unjust, what could help your government is not blind citizens, it's critical citizens. Exactly, by the way, in every single religious settings, it could be exactly the same. When, for example, some of our fellow citizens are asking us as Muslims, what do you say about these Muslims that are killing innocent people? When I say not only this is not Islamic, but this is anti-Islamic, what I'm doing is I am promoting something which is a critical belonging to the Muslim community. When they are right, I'm with them. They will be wrong, I will stand up against them. So this critical loyalty is something which is essential in the way we speak about citizenship. Member of a structured society with the same rights, the same duties, but also a critical mind. Because we need the critical input of the citizens to help the democratic system to remain as it is. Why? Because you could end up with blind support towards something which is the end of the democratic system working against itself, which is nationalism, and at the end of the road, fascism. Blind support, I'm right, this is my country. And be careful, on the road towards, blind support, there are very dangerous statements that could be made by some of the leaders. When, for example, after September 11, I was in the States. I went, I don't know how many times after September 11, and I was in the Islamic convention in Chicago. And they were just under the pressure because George Bush said, you are with us or against us. This is a very dangerous thing. I may be with you by being against you when I think that you are doing wrong against us. You may not know it, but I'm with you because I'm against when you are doing wrong. So I could be critically for you when I stand up when you are acting against our common rights, our common rules. This is something which is essential. Why? Because to get this sense of citizenship, we need to trust each other. So there is a dimension here which is really important. When, for example, I'm a Dutch citizen, and I'm sitting with someone who is a more white Dutch citizen, and I criticize the country or the government, you must trust me very deeply to be sure that in fact I'm doing it for the sake of the country. Because if you mistrust me, you may think, he has an agenda in mind. Trust is something which is really important. Critical mind, we have to add trust in the way we deal with it, at the local level, at the national level. So no citizenship with a very clear legal framework, and that you have to add some dimensions that are very important in the way we are dealing with the critical mind. So it's an intellectual dimension, but also something which has to do with an inner dimension, which is we are trusting each other. I trust you when you are critical because at the end of the day, I think that what you want is the better for our common society. But if I don't trust you, I may think that you have a specific agenda with your community, with your secondary belonging, for example, or other dimensions. So here, there is this rule of law which is essential. This is helping us towards the democratic process. And there is another discussion also when it comes to citizenship, because what we have also you cannot disconnect this from something which is essential in the European democratic society, which is the distinction between the private sphere and the public sphere. Secular dimension. The secular dimension, and we have to be clear about it, because if we are not clear about it, we may end up to get an ideological discussion on it. The secular dimension is saying that we are trying to get a public sphere which is quite neutral. Meaning by this, neutral means there is no specific privileges to one religion over another in the public sphere. It doesn't mean that religions are disappearing from the public sphere. If not, we would not have all these churches. And it's not this. It's not disappearance of the religious presence. It's equal treatment of all the religious bodies. This is something which is quite important. And here we have different settings and different institutionalizations. In fact, in Europe, the secular process is one, separating church and state, but its institutionalization is diverse, because the French model of laïcité, it's not the Dutch model of multiculturalism. By the way, the Dutch model of multiculturalism, using the same word, is not the British model of multiculturalism. You have the same word, but not at all the same dimensions. It's not the same things. They are not the same thing. So you need to understand that the same process produced in history different models. Why? Because of the religions that are involved in the process. When you are dealing with Catholic Church in, for example, France, it's not the same when we are dealing with Protestant, organization. So you have to deal with religions. You have to deal with collective psychology. You can't understand why when you start to talk about religions in France, it's passionate, always. It's even crazy sometimes here. What are we talking about? If you don't understand the past of this society, it has nothing to do with Islam, it has nothing to do with the specific relationship between the French state and the church. So here, this is something which is also part of what we are talking about when we talk about citizenship. All these dimensions are here. And we need to understand that this is the process through which we have to talk about this issue. But it's not over. Then we are now talking about all this dimension. And now what happened after the Second World War, and even before in some of the European societies, we have these newcomers and now new citizens. We still speak about them as if we were speaking about immigration. And I'm sorry, it's no longer immigration for them. We still have immigrants coming, but these are citizens. They are Dutch, they are British, they are French, European citizens. And if we continue to project onto them, we are dealing with immigrants. Or the way you put it, by the way, this is a way to speak about them which is completely unacceptable, for example, in France, in the other way, which is, what does it mean when you are a citizen, and when we are differentiating between citizen and citizen by saying to someone, you are an allochtone citizen and an autochtone citizen? Thank you. Levels? What it means. What it means in the psyche, what it means in history. We can understand this when we are dealing with the Dutch society and we understand how it works. I'm not always sure that even the Dutch people know how it works. Because I met some of the Dutch people realizing when they were talking to me that in fact they were not so much autochtone already. Because it has to do with not only with your generation or the generation before, it has to do with the generation which is before the one before yourself. So it's not as easy as that. So the point here is really to understand that we have newcomers and they are citizens, and they don't have to do with immigration. And sometimes we still project onto them that they have to integrate. I'm always saying now, this is something which is coming from the ground, when integration is a success, or integration is a success when we stop talking about integration. In fact, to continue to talk about integration is a problem in itself. It means that we are still putting the people outside, so they come in. But when they are already in, and we perceive them as being outside, there's a problem in our mind, maybe not in the reality. And this is why I think that we have to come with a post-integration discourse. To speak much more about contribution, by the way. Contribution is something which is much more feeling at home. When you contribute, you feel much more at home. So, having said that, you have now citizens, and I met here in Holland with them. You are now between the second and it's coming, the third generation is coming now. They are Dutch. They speak Dutch as you speak Dutch. They understand the country, they understand the history, and then they are at home here. So the problem is to continue to tell them you have to integrate. It's not helping you, it's not helping them, it's not helping the new we, which is the we, the Dutch citizens building the society of tomorrow. And here, it means that we have to come with something which is a new dimension. And this new dimension has to do with the sense of belonging. And let me tell you why it's so important, the sense of belonging. The sense of belonging is not only that you get the rights and the duties, but you have the feeling that you are at home in the country. That this is home for you. And when it comes to the sense of belonging, it's a two-way process. All the sociologists, whatever is their school, respective school of thought, go to the French one, if you go to Keppel, to Roy, to Khosrow-Gabard, the French, they don't agree with themselves, but you have a school there, or Boboro, Jean Boboro. If on the other side you go to the Canadian, Charles Taylor, or Pimlinka, or you go to the Anglo-Saxon with, even when you go to people like Mudud in his last book, they all agree on something. We have to stick to the laws, and there is something which is essential here. The laws are helping us to come together. Now they disagree on what we have to add to this. And this sense of belonging, this dimension that we need to acknowledge the fact that our societies have changed as to the cultural setting and the religious belongings, are pushing us, all this is pushing us to come with something which is to add to this legal dimension of citizenship. And here there is something which is really important, is a two-way process. I was telling you, why is it important? Look at the British-born and raised Muslims who were involved in July the 7th. If you were to assess their profiles or respective profiles on what we are talking about when it comes to integration, they would have everything we expected from them. When you speak about integration, maybe you speak about social integration, cultural integration, religious integration, sometimes intellectual integration. It means that you are in the society. Cultural integration means that you are taking from the surrounding culture. The great majority of them were very much westernized. They were even not meeting in mosque, but in gyms, and some of them were going to pubs and 2 weeks before doing what they did. Second, we are speaking about, so this is about the cultural westernized. The religious, some of them were just becoming to start to practice, or even just not really practicing Muslim. So religious integration was not a problem. Intellectual integration, they were very much educated, not at all on the margin. They had nothing to do with what we are talking about when we talk about the suburbs, or the people they don't have education, marginalized, violent, drugs. And the last is about social integration. They got jobs, and all of them had jobs. If you assess their profile and what we are talking about when it comes to integration, they were completely integrated, but something was missing. All their discourses was based on what I said at the beginning, us versus them. I'm here, but I don't feel at home here. And here, these are few people going to the extreme and violent extremism that we reject. But we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to help the people to feel at home in the two-way process here? And this also has to do with citizenship, to become a subject. How? By giving them, to educate is to give value. When you are educated, you are respected and you get a value. So the point here is to ask ourselves, what are we doing in our schools to give value to the people and also to help them to feel at home? When we say here, Holland has changed, and our society today is a multicultural, multi-religious, multicolored society with memories. Go to your schools and assess what is said about the cultural dimension, or the dimension of this diversity in our mainstream official curriculum. You will find that very often we still are setting and focusing on the white, indigenous, old past. While if we are serious about letting the people feel at home, we should say something about people who came in this country and built this country after the Second World War. Who built this country after the Second World War? Only the Dutch white people? Or people coming from elsewhere with other memories? We need an official common history of memory. Because if you don't put me somewhere in your past, I'm sure that I'm not going to be in the picture of your present. That's for sure. Tell me how you read the past, and we'll know how you are considering my presence between you. And if we are really working about inclusiveness, it should be official. And it's not only, very many Muslims are saying, you have to say something about the Middle Ages. Yes, that's fine. By the way, that's true. You can get a PhD in philosophy knowing nothing about the Islamic philosophers or the Muslim philosophers or only simply the philosophers, European philosophers. Why should we say that Descartes is a Muslim philosopher? He was a philosopher. You don't say to Descartes he was a Christian philosopher, but when it comes to other, it has Muslim philosopher. It's like with me. It's very often they have to add a Muslim intellectual. Oh yes, I have to be put a Muslim. Why? Because of what? My faith, my origin. Why for some is universal intellectualism and for others Islamic intellectualism? Where does it come from? It comes from we are projecting. And in France, for example, you cannot say a Jewish intellectual. You have to say an intellectual. But the same people who are not accepting it because it's labeling, I can understand that, they can tell you, and you as a Muslim intellectual. Why? Where is this problem? The problem is very deep here because it's a self-perception. So having said that, I think that inclusiveness from our society is really important. But it's not only this. What? I promise I'm finishing. Thank you. So we have here, this is the way we have to deal with it. But it's also something that we have to do from within the religious communities. And if you just go and try to see what is happening and what has happened during the last generation, I think 15 years, I am speaking about the silent revolution at the grassroots level within the Muslim community, but it's not enough. We have to do more than that. But this contribution to understand better the society, to understand the role, the laws, to understand the rules, to understand what it means to be within the society. For example, a few years ago, I was among some Muslim leaders saying, now we need to be much more to reach out, to get out of our intellectual, social and religious ghettos, to come with the people. The manifesto for a new we is exactly this. The future of Holland is, look at this room, you have people coming from all the backgrounds. This is the future, and we have to come together. This is the new we. All the people here who feel that they all think that they can just remain faithful to the new old white we, I'm sorry to tell you it's over. Now, the new we built on common principles, common hopes, common changes, common transformation for the better of our society. This is what we have to do, but it takes effort. It takes effort. And very often when I am in a sitting like this, I'm always asking the citizens, tell me during the last 2 weeks how many people from a different background than yours have you met and worked with? Because it's easy to be sitting and say, oh, I'm a very open-minded man or woman. But when you are only open-minded with people who have the same minds as yours, it's not to be open. It's just to look at yourself in the mirror and say, oh, I'm fine. But it's a mirror. It's not going to tell you the reality of you being in your own ghetto. And don't think of the ghettos only for the black, Arab, Moroccan, Turkish ghettos. I'm saying that we are living in the danger here that we have also white, rich ghettos. So ghettos here, ghettos there, and we are waiting for something to happen. So this is why we have to come together. And this is, we could go beyond this by having a discourse which is clarifying the picture, by saying, look, these are religious questions that we may have, and there are some religious questions. I would be the last one to deny the fact that Muslims should come back to the sources and come with something which is a strong reassessment of some of the principles, of course. And not to please you, by the way, is not to please the others, just to be consistent with our own self. When it comes to the question of violence, when it comes to the question of women, but not only when it comes to the question of cultures and colors. Because many Muslims are saying, you know, in Islam there is no racism, and they are right. But you have Muslims that are racists, and we are right as well. I met some people saying, you know, I converted to Islam, I am a Dutch man or woman, they want me to Arabize myself. We have to deal with this. This is a very deep question, because it's a question of respecting the cultural identity of the people. On the other side, we also have to come with a very strong commitment to go beyond our ghettos and to come together. So there is internal discussions to have, and there are common discussions to have. If we are not serious today about some of the socio-economic challenges that we have, we are pushing the people to go towards identity crisis, to come back to us and to tell us, this is my identity because you don't respect my being. So when it comes to citizenship or citizens and subjects, respect the subject in the citizen. Respect his being or her being, because if there is something which is called second-class citizenship in our country, you will have first identity reaction in our society. If we are not serious about this. Bad policies ending with bad politics. And then this is, I think, where we have to come together. So, to clarify the picture, to come with other dimensions, and the last thing that I wanted to say, where are we going to win the struggle? By having international, a global vision, yes. By having a national understanding, yes. But by having a local commitment at the local level in Utrecht. It is where it starts, with citizens, with intellectuals, with universities, reaching out, being together, connecting each other, and trying to do the job that they have to do, and just to get out of you know, isolating intellectual discourses or isolating social, you know, policies. I think that this is where we have to come. At the end of the day, the citizens will have what they deserve. Not committed, they will have populist politicians. Not acting, they will have segregation coming at the grassroots level. Not working for justice, they will see in front of them injustices promoting violence and struggles in our streets. It's for us to know what we want and what we are ready to commit ourselves to change this society. Thank you.